Hey guys, it's Hayden here making another video. Today I'm here to talk about how the story that you tell yourself is not who you are. Let's get into it. For anyone who's new to my channel, I talk about spirituality, mental health, and any kind of insight that I gain in my personal development. If that sounds like something that's interesting to you, then feel free to check out my other videos and consider subscribing. I also offer coaching sessions. If that's something you're interested in, then check out my website. The link will be in the description below. It outlines my different services that I offer, and then you can reach out to me through that platform or through my email or Instagram, which will also be in the description below. So today I want to share an insight that I've had for myself about identity and about the narrative that we run of ourselves in our mind. If you've watched some of my other videos, you might know that I've struggled with social anxiety, I've struggled with depression and other things in the past, and so I have in general kind of struggled with negative narratives in my mind of worrying about what other people are thinking of me, worried about the future, or having anxiety about situations. And I've also had some kind of arrogant thoughts of thinking of myself as better than other people and thinking that maybe I'm more intelligent or better in some way than others, both of which are not super helpful narratives. And so I forget kind of where this epiphany came about from, but it's been really helpful for me, and that's to not identify or not believe in any story that kind of crosses my mind. So I think for me, there's a tendency to, in the past, to believe like everything that kind of comes through my mind, or at least believe some of it. And as soon as I believe or commit to that truth, I feel like it generally brings me down a spiral of potentially negative thinking, or potentially kind of like feeling superior or greater than others, or feeling like kind of high in some ways. And that was very much true in psychosis, which being completely identified with a narrative that was disconnected from reality. And so a lot of the learning that I have been doing recently is to not believe anything that shows up in my mind. Not believing when, the thoughts come in of like, oh, does this person have judgments towards me? Does this person, am I doing the right thing? Or, like I'm really smart and like this is, I'm doing really well here. And so I tend to just view it as just information, like, oh, that's information that's passing by. I don't cling to the narrative. I don't necessarily identify with the narrative, because what I've kind of come to realize and what I've learned from other people is that we are not the narrative. We're not the story. That's just stuff that's flowing through our brains. It's like a radio channel, and it's not always really helpful. And the more we cling to those stories and identities, the more limited and small my world has become. So when I found that I let go of the story, and it's a constant practice, it doesn't just like happen instantly. It's like recognizing like, oh, I'm caught up in a story or a narrative. I'm identified with this narrative, and then being like, oh, well, that's not me. Like that's just something that's passing through my brain. And it doesn't mean that some of that information is not helpful. We don't have to cling to it. We don't have to latch onto it. It can just be like a sign of like, oh, maybe I do have some insecurity about this situation, but I don't necessarily need to feed into the narrative of like, oh, what am I doing? Like, am I going to mess things up? Is this a bad situation? That's not helpful. It's just like, oh, okay, I'm nervous. Cool. just let it go. You know, if it just keeps on rolling through different scenarios, okay, that's fine. And that's been really helpful, because it doesn't feel like I'm tied down to a specific me, or I need to like meet an expectation, or I need to follow a specific rule. It gives me permission to just be, just to exist, and to understand that I'm much more than what I have going on in my brain. And it can really apply to any narrative. It can apply to someone thinking that they're super spiritual. It can apply to someone who thinks they're a terrible person. It can apply to somebody who maybe thinks that they're good or bad, or there's no, all of those labels are just things that are created. They're artificial constructs. I don't think a cat, I have 2 cats, I don't think they're walking around thinking if they're good or bad. They just do things. They just exist. Right, little buddy? Yeah, exactly. So I think a lot of those judgments and expectations and stuff is just stuff we inherit from society, from our parents, from ourselves, believing into specific narratives. And so those can be helpful to understand and to give us a reference point how to function and how to move in the world. But as soon as we become identified with that, it's a very limiting container to put ourselves in, and feels very small and very boxy and very uncomfortable, because it's that's not who we are. We're not just the idea or the concept. We're so much more than that. So don't put yourself in the box, you know? We're going to do it over and over, because like we have a brain, and we get tired and we get stressed and we get overwhelmed, and we're going to get stuck in a box at some point. But at some point you can choose to be like, "Oh, that's a narrative, that's a story. That's not me. Like, that's just what's happening right now." And it does take practice, and I mean, I don't know. It's been helpful for me, so I don't know if that's helpful for you guys. Just know that you're so much more than your thoughts. You're so much more than your ideas, your expectations, who you think you should be, who you think you are right now. You are so much more than what you could possibly imagine or think of or quantify. We're not beings who can be quantified into a specific description. That's not how it works. So hopefully this video is helpful for you in some way. If you have any questions or feel like I maybe missed something, feel free to put that in the comments below. And as always, guys, make sure to seek your truth and to take time for yourself. Bye for now.